Welcome. One of the questions I often get asked when working with leadership teams and individuals is, why do people behave the way they do? Most of us find it difficult to understand behavior of others, especially when it differs from our own. Equally, most of us find it difficult to explain why we behave the way we do, especially when that behavior seems contrary to what is in our best interests. In this webinar, I will explore the true drivers of our behavior and how an understanding of our brain provides us with critical insight that supports our development personally and professionally so that we may achieve our potential. My name is Heather Hilliard. I am the co-creator of the Striving Styles Personality System and co-author of the book, Who Are You Meant to Be? For the past 25 years, I have worked with organizations and individuals to shift behavioral patterns that get in the way of achieving the results people want and of achieving their potential. We as human beings have come a long way in understanding how our brain functions. However, few of us truly understand who we are meant to be. We seek instead to try to figure out what we are meant to do. We have it backwards. In order to truly understand our nature and our true potential, it is critical to understand the mechanics of our minds, our emotions, and the impact of our psychological needs on our behavior, both when those needs are being met and when they are being frustrated. It is said that at the moment of our birth, each of us has an awareness of our potential and an idea of who we are meant to be. In the next moment, this awareness disappears into the unconscious, where it becomes our task to uncover it during our lifetime. Our brains contain the roadmap for discovering who we are meant to be, which is hardwired from birth. We easily see the nature, personality, and emotional blueprint in a child from a very young age. While conditioning impacts our personality, it doesn't change the way our brains process information and the emotional needs that must be met in order for us to feel secure and ultimately to thrive. So why, when we have this blueprint for achieving our potential, we fail to do so? Many people lack self-awareness and aren't really even acquainted with their potential. In our extroverted society, we tend to focus more on what's outside of us to affirm our self-esteem and tell us what we should be doing and behaving. For hundreds of years, we believed the key to happiness was using our rational brain while ignoring and controlling our emotions. We now know that our ability to self-actualize lies in our ability to experience and use our emotions. So what's driving your behavior? Are you aware of how your emotions influence you? Do you know what you need in order to be truly satisfied? If not, you live at the mercy of your emotions, doing what you feel like doing instead of what you actually want to do and need to do in order to achieve your potential. When you understand the mechanics of your mind, you are clearly in the driver's seat. You are able to decide what you want to do instead of being held hostage by your emotional reactions. Understanding the mechanics of your mind means you know how your brain is organized, how your needs and emotions influence your behavior, and how fear stops you when you are living from what we call your self-protective system. You also understand how to strengthen your authentic self, shift to your desired behaviors, and stay on track to become the person you are meant to be. Like most people, you probably believe that your behavior is driven by your thoughts. You might even have difficulty believing your emotions are responsible for many of the decisions you make. But think about it. If we were truly driven to behave by our thoughts, we would be doing everything we decide to do, or know what is right to do. Just think about all of the times you've told yourself, I will never do that destructive behavior, eating ice cream, going out with that kind of person again, Or consider those New Year's resolutions that fell by the wayside by the middle of January. Think about how often you do what you feel like doing, or make decisions because you are afraid something negative will happen to you if you do what you want to. You easily see how true it is that it's our emotions that are driving our behavior. We are all driven by powerful psychological needs. These needs must be met for us to feel secure and to achieve our potential. When our needs are met, we are poised for growth and development. When our needs are not met, behavior is more instinctual and emotionally charged, and at times destructive rather than productive. I remember once being asked by my business partner, well, what is it that you need? And I honestly couldn't answer the question. There was a part of me that wanted to say, well, really, there's nothing that I need. But the reality is, and what we now understand about the human mind and how the brain is organized, there are actually 8 distinct psychological needs, each rooted in the different functions of our brain. And how it is that our brain is organized determines which of these 8 distinct psychological needs is actually driving our particular behavior. So how is your brain organized? The fact is that our brains are organized to process information and make decisions in a particular way. They are also wired to react emotionally. Understanding how our brain is hardwired actually helps you to decide what function or part of the brain you need to use, how to delay gratification and manage emotions, and what it is that you must actually do to leverage your brain organization in order to achieve your potential. So how do you learn how your brain is organized? Well, it's pretty simple these days. Assessments that sort personality into functional preferences have been around for almost a century. The Striving Styles personality system goes beyond other personality type assessments, helping you also understand those emotional needs I talked about earlier that drive your behavior and how to develop and integrate your brain over time in order to achieve your potential. Our brain has 4 functional quadrants. 2 of these quadrants are on the left, and 2 of these quadrants are on the right. Probably heard of people talking about whether or not they're left-brained or right-brained. We go further with this to say 2 of the quadrants are located in proximity to the prefrontal cortex, which we call the rational brain. The other 2 quadrants are located closer to the limbic system, which we call the emotional brain. Each quadrant of the brain serves a particular purpose, has a unique set of talents and abilities that are rooted in that particular quadrant of the brain, and each quadrant of the brain has particular emotional needs that are connected to it. So let's start understanding the 4 quadrants of the brain. Starting from the left rational quadrant of the brain, this quadrant is what we use for making decisions. Its sole purpose is to decide what something is, where it belongs, what its relative usefulness is, and what the priorities for attention are. It's objective, it's logical, and principled. It sees the world in terms of data points. It creates a complete ideology of how the world should operate by developing principles, laws, and structures, and then sorting everything in that external world accordingly. It helps us to consider objectively and dispassionately what needs to be done, how soon it needs to be done, and who must do it. It processes information in a very reasoned and logical fashion, allowing us to decide things pragmatically. It decides where we need to place our effort in order to achieve our goals. It has an impersonal, systematic basis for focusing attention. If the left rational brain could talk, it would say things like, hey, nothing personal, but I'm sorting you into the plumbers category and also into the people who live on my street category. Or, You wear crystals, long skirts, and sandals like my Aunt Betty. You're a new age sort of person. The left rational brain doesn't feel any particular way about all this information. It just goes about its tidy analytical way, keeping track of what's what. Probably one of the highest profile examples of someone who lives predominantly out of their left rational brain would be Donald Trump, and who clearly is defining in his world what is right, the way it should be, and sorting people into those who get to stay and those who must go. He's drawing boundaries and lines in the sand. And these are all activities that are rooted in this upper left rational quadrant of the brain. On the other side, the goal or purpose of the right rational brain is to imagine, to conceptualize, and to synthesize information, and experiences, bringing it all together in order to figure out how it all fits. It produces awareness of what is possible or what might be by processing and integrating information and experiences and bringing them together into a holistic concept or vision for the future. It is with this part of the brain that we develop foresight and the ability to imagine a future that is very different from our present. Our right rational brain envisions the world the way we desire it to be and formulates ideas about how to bring this vision to life. The right rational brain is optimistic, it's hopeful, so it can help us to see our way out of difficult situations and to approach new activities with a fresh, open-minded attitude. It provides us with the ability to see the potential in things and to view the world as rich with endless possibilities. If the right rational brain could talk, it would say things like, I know you're currently working as a house painter, but I can see you have the potential to become an artist. Or, my mother gave me this great tablecloth, but I saw the potential for it to be a part of the quilt that I am making. Nothing is static and always has the potential to be more than it currently is for this particular part of the brain. A great example of someone who lives out of this part of the brain is Oprah, who's always envisioning something new and something more. And if we watch the pattern of her career going from being as a news reporter, television reporter, through to having her own show, magazine, her own network, and the work that she does and the kinds of things she brings to the table for people is that experience of what's possible for you, what's your potential, how do we achieve more than what we have today. And so this is a great example who is someone who is rooted in the right rational quadrant of the brain. Continuing along clockwise, we'll talk about the right emotional quadrant. Now, the goal or purpose of this particular part of the brain is to have emotional experiences. It can produce emotions about what is going on in the present, as well as retrieving stored emotionally charged memories from the past. This quadrant decides what value something has or doesn't have. In other words, it figures out whether we like something or not. It compares and judges what is being experienced and generates feelings about it based on those judgments. Because we are all attracted to and repelled by different things, this subjective valuing is unique to each person. One person hearing the song White Christmas can activate happy feelings of nostalgia, while another it could bring tears of remembered pain and sadness. The right emotional brain doesn't know why the songs make us happy or sad, although this information may be held elsewhere. It only knows what it feels. This quadrant tends to believe something is true because it feels that it is true, despite fact-based evidence to the contrary. It fulfills its mandate by recreating feelings that were experienced in the past. Great examples of individuals, high-profile individuals who have the right emotional quadrant as their predominant are Nelson Mandela and Princess Diana. So finally, moving on to the left emotional brain, this is the most mechanistic of the four brain quadrants. This means it does things in a fashion that is both impersonal and automatic. Its primary purpose is to experience physical sensations. It doesn't mind doing the same thing over and over and over again if the action is producing the desired sensations. It is present-oriented, focusing on what has to be done now and following instructions to the letter. Precise and procedural, it doesn't reflect on the why of things, only on the how. This quadrant is connected to the processing of positive emotions and relatively complex emotions. It is more objective in its emotional processing than the right emotional brain is, as its goal is to produce sensations, not feelings. It is more black and white when deliberating and tends to quickly filter out experiences that it labels bad. This quadrant also sequences activities so that things are done in a specific fashion. Like the athlete who practices the same activity over and over again to achieve a predictable result. The left emotional brain strives to recreate conditions that will bring familiar sensations. It is planful, linear, and deliberate. It can follow activity to the letter, not having to know what the final outcome is. Like the soldier following orders, it is comfortable with its role in performing the specific task without knowing what the big picture is all about. And just wrapping this one up, some really good high-profile examples of individuals that are rooted in this particular part of the brain. So each of us has access to all four of these quadrants, and that's why it's important to understand what these four quadrants are and what the role is that they play in our personality and ultimately in driving our behavior. It's important to understand which part of the brain we should be using for which activities, because it's the part of the brain that has the inherent talents and abilities rooted in it. However, at the time of birth, we are actually hardwired to prefer one of these four quadrants over the other three. In fact, one of these quadrants is considered to be 100 times more efficient than the other three because of the neural pathways that are laid down at the time of our birth. Now, the quadrant opposing or opposite our predominant will actually be the one that we have the greatest difficulty accessing, as there are no direct neural connections and we have to go through one of the other quadrants to get there. So in order to achieve our potential, we must build pathways to connect all four quadrants in order to access the talents and abilities rooted in our brain functions. Now, some of you may think that I should simply avoid activities that require me to use the opposing part of my brain. But let me give you an example of what this might look like. Going back to Oprah, who's had a very public struggle with her weight over the course of her career. And we've watched through the different phases of her career success as she has put on weight and taken it back off again. Now, one of the things that's important to remember is that Oprah is rooted in the upper right rational brain. So this is the part of the brain that goes after what is possible and what we can see as being the potential for us in this world and for us to create. The opposing quadrant for Oprah's brain style is the sensing or experiencing part of our brain, which is rooted again down in the left emotional quadrant. That's the part of the brain that we use for following discipline, for attending to a particular experience, or for creating and repeating sensations that we find enjoyable. So what that will mean for someone with Oprah's brain organization is for all of that energy that is going out into the world to create and to build what is possible, the part of the brain that's used for following disciplines and routines that relate to diet and to health and to fitness are going to get dropped, because that's the part of her brain that she has the least amount of natural access to. So she has to work really hard to stay focused on that. So at times where her business, it feels more settled, she may actually have more energy and ability to hold on to those disciplines and those practices. But the moment she gets stretched or stressed, those disciplines, it's going to be harder to hang on to, so she's more likely to be seen as putting weight on. So again, each of the areas that we struggle with in our lives, we can bring this back to the quadrants of the brain. What part of our brain might we be struggling to use the talents from, and how can we work with that to build up new pathways in order to be more effective? So taking this a step further, we actually choose to use the function rooted in each of the quadrants in the brain in either the external world, so extroverting that particular function, or we use it in the inner world, so we introvert that function. As a result, there really are 8 functions in the brain, or 8 ways in which we will live out in terms of our personality organization. And any one of these 8 can be our predominant function. So in the chart you see before you, we show the archetypes of these 8 functions, brain organizations, or what we call the 8 styles. The 4 on the outside of the boxes are those styles using that function in the outer world. The 4 styles on the inside are those are the use of those 4 functions in an inner or an introverted way. So just understand that. And so in the striving styles, when we look at the 8 functions of the brain, again, one of these is going to be your predominant, but you will have 3 other that make up your entire brain organization. 2 of your styles in your brain organization will be introverted. 2 of them will be extroverted. Okay, so there's always a balancing in there. So each of the functions, each of the 8 functions, so the 4 brain functions plus whether we use it on an inner or an outer way, is represented by a striving style which has a predominant emotional need that must be met in order to feel secure. So going back to what we were talking about earlier about what really drives our behavior, as we come down to another level, yes, it's about our brain organization, but specifically it is about the emotional need that is rooted in that particular brain organization, or the 4 distinct needs that are rooted in that brain organization. And so those emotional needs must be met in order for people to feel secure. And it is our behavior that we bring into our lives that is all about getting that particular need met. So the emotional needs listed are what drives the actual behavior behind each of those styles. So going back to Oprah, just to continue with that example, Oprah has a need to be recognized. So she's the performer style as her predominant. And so that drive to be out, to be on the stage, to grow things, to make it bigger, whether it's in an entrepreneurial context, to perform an actual performing context, or even just in the impact people are having in their world. It is driven by the need to be recognized. So it's important to understand what that need is. I go back to the example of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is driven by a need to be in control. And that need to be in control of his external world is what will drive him to define it, to limit it, and to put restrictions on what is okay and what is not okay and the way the world should be according to Trump. That is all him acting from that place of getting the emotional need to be in control met. So when we look at the behavior of ourselves and the others, when we have this understanding of these 8 predominant or 8 innate psychological needs, we actually can really understand why it is people behave the way they behave. They are working to get these needs met. And sometimes we can work to get these needs met in a very productive manner, and in other times we can be very unproductive in our approach to getting these needs met. For example, someone who has the need to be connected, when we look at the socializer rooted in the lower right or the right emotional quadrant of the brain, they're driven by a need to be connected. When that need gets frustrated, they can disconnect from people because it's a way of connecting and disconnecting. They can also martyr themselves in order to be helpful and to be able to stay in the relationship. They can be overly adaptive, putting the needs of someone else ahead of their own, and become codependent in their relationships in order to keep that connection. or in a workplace context, they can put too much of an emphasis on being liked, which will actually get in their way, a way of effectively being able to lead and put the needs of the business ahead of their own need to be connected. So you can see that this connection between each of these needs and how it is that it really drives our behavior. As I said earlier, we all have 4 quadrants in our brains and are born hardwired to use or favor one quadrant over the other 3. The favored quadrant houses our predominant style. This quadrant operates significantly more efficiently and easily than the others, so we return to it again and again, further reinforcing it as the predominant function. When we use our predominant style, we learn faster and enjoy ourselves more in the process. To achieve our full potential, however, we need to learn to actively recruit the other 3 parts of our brain, and in so doing, we create a vital new neural pathways that will help us respond more flexibly to life's demands. Each of the members of our squad, as we refer to this foursome, has a biological mandate and a role it is meant to play based on the quadrant of the brain it resides in. If you understand the nature of the roles and to learn to appreciate the value each one brings to your personality, you will be in a much better position to coordinate activities among the 4 quadrants, thereby fully leveraging your squad, maximizing your capabilities, and becoming who you are meant to be. Depending on the brain quadrant where your predominant style resides, the strength of the connections to the adjacent associate styles will vary. The associate on your squad with the fewest neural networks attached to your predominant style will be most challenging to use, but also most necessary because it has a balancing role to play with your predominant style. Connections between the predominant style's quadrant and the other quadrants can be strengthened over time with attention and effort through experience, as we can build new neural pathways to our brains at any point in time. Knowing which associate style will be most powerful in any given situation and how to shift consciously to that style are critical steps towards optimizing our potential. For example, if you are a socializer with too many irons in the fire, you may begin to feel overwhelmed. It's time to shift to your intellectual, who is skilled at sorting through your activities and deciding which ones really deserve to be prioritized. The squad is meant to function as an alliance in order to create a solid and enduring foundation for the personality. Our brain has all of the hardware it needs to ensure this happens. It just needs us to live consciously or to consciously engage in our own development. Living our lives as the person we are meant to be becomes a reality when we use more than just one quadrant of our brain. Our potential for dealing with any situation demands becomes unlimited. Once we begin integrating all 4 of our striving styles, we are no longer limited to seeing ourselves and our world through a single lens. Achieving potential takes more than just an aha moment. It actually requires us to repattern our brains and shift from emotional-driven automatic behaviors that get in our way. The first step in developing behavior requires you to fully understand the mechanics of your own mind, your self-protective and self-actualizing behaviors. You want to make sure that your needs are getting met, and so that we're not living from our self-protective brain, which means we are ultimately being driven by our emotions. So really looking to develop your behavior to understand further why you specifically behave the way you do and what is your developmental path or roadmap for actually integrating and leveraging your whole brain in order to become who you are meant to be. The first step is always in really fully understanding the mechanics of your own mind. So for more information, find out about your brain style, check out whoareyoumeanttobe.com or order your copy of the book, which provides a lot more information about the model and about the system, including a mini self-assessment. Sign up to learn more. We have other webinars. We have other tips and techniques that we can email you if you join our newsletter and join our community. And of course, bring us in-house. We do offer all sorts of leadership development and coaching programs, career development programs, as well as individual counseling and support related programs that we can go take into organizations. Thank you for your time and your attention. And again, there's lots of opportunities for you to increase your knowledge about your style and ultimately who you're meant to be, and get you on the path or your own roadmap towards your own development, whether it's personally or professionally. Thank you for taking your time to watch this webinar, and we hope you found the information helpful.